a good place to start is program start dates or school start dates. What do you think about that, Ben? I think it's interesting our perspective on this specific issue because I think very few people know how visa officers view school start dates.
This is something that probably wasn't too relevant to most student visa applicants in the past, but this year, because of the lack of availability of appointments, it's become a real issue. So a whole lot of our clients have been applying for schools, getting accepted, getting their I-120s that say, okay, the program start date is August 15th, right? But then our clients can't get a visa appointment until September 30th, right? And so they have to apply for an emergency appointment based on that program start date. And the embassies are understaffed right now. They're understaffed with their American visa officers and also with local staff because of COVID restrictions. And so they are trying to get as many students in as possible, but they have limited resources. And then how do they choose who to prioritize, right? One student who has a program start date, on this date and another one on this date, they're trying to get them both in there and they just have to kind of go first come, first serve.
Yes.
So then what happens is that a lot of students are given an emergency date, but it still comes after their program start date.
I think that's a really good point, Ben. And actually, interestingly enough, I've been getting questions about, from people who haven't even booked their appointment because the first thing they see is that the next available visa appointment is actually after their start date. So they don't know what to do. They don't know the emergency visa appointment process. Can you go through that a little bit?
Oh yeah, you've got to book as soon as possible because it is first come, first served, not just for appointments, but also for the emergency ones, right?
Right.
All things being equal, you're just a student who's got a program start date. If you don't get your request in early enough, then you won't get an emergency appointment that's early enough for you to get your visa in time for your program start date. So if you see that next visa appointment's not available until, say, in some cases, June next year, you still need to get your appointment on the books and get that emergency request in there so that they can slot you in as early as possible.
That's
because
right.
what may have to happen, and this is unfortunate for a lot of people that their plans are delayed, but this is the world right now in the era of COVID. You might have to hope to get your visa appointment for this fall semester, but maybe you won't get it. Maybe you won't get an appointment until October, right? And then maybe you're going to have to ask your school to move your program start date to the spring semester in January.
That's such a good point. Yeah. So rule number one is to just get your visa appointment as soon as possible because you actually need a booked visa appointment in order to request an expedited visa appointment. And so make sure you do that no matter how far down the road it is, you need that appointment to request the expedite. It's such a great point, Ben. So interestingly enough, I don't think a lot of people realize that visa officers actually have this rule that if they know that a student cannot actually make it in time for their program start date that's listed on their I-20, we're actually not allowed to approve the visa. And so this is something important to take note. So if you're a student visa applicant going in for your visa interview, expedited or regular, depending on where you're applying in the world, first check your I-20 to see when school starts. And then what you want to do is also talk to your international advisor, talk to your DSO to see how flexible that start date is. Because in my conversations with DSOs, and Ben, I'm sure you've talked to some too, but there is a little bit of flexibility. There's not a lot, but there's a little bit. It could be up to a week or 10 days past that date on your I-20. And so once you find out how much flexibility there is, what you'll want to do is ask your international advisor or DSO to update the very last date to the very last date that you can arrive and be on time for your program in the SEVIS system. And you'll want to be prepared to explain that situation at your visa interview if that date is different than what's on your I-20.
And you can get a new physical hard copy of the I-20 for that, or you can just have them update that information and then have that virtually in the system, because now in most places around the world, they are accepting electronic information for the I-20 instead of requiring that you actually get the physical one, just because of how hard it is to get those moving around the world right now.
That's right. And one other thing I'll mention is even if you're not able to get the updated I-20, the emailed copy or the virtual copy, make sure that the DSO still updates it in their system, because this was true of a couple of the consulates I worked at. But even if it's not correct on the I-20, we will have staff at the consulate that will go into the SEVIS system and check to see what the date is to confirm that you can actually arrive by that date.
Now, they'll go in and check that only if they think that there's a reason to think that that program start date has been moved. So what you need to do
Yes.
is make sure, bring a letter, you've got that email printout, but actually it'd be better if they sent you a PDF that you can print out and show, look, I've got from my university saying that they have changed my program start date in the online SEVIS system. And, please check that to confirm, just to make sure that you don't get overlooked and they just see, oh, program start date is not realizable, and so we're going to refuse you. That's another thing I want to point out. Realizable is the word that they use for that program start date. So it doesn't mean like the program start date can be any time after the visa interview. If your visa interview is today, we're recording this August 13th. If your visa interview is today and the program start date is August 14th, they're not going to apply. They're not going to issue that visa because it's not realizable. It's not realistically possible for you to get to the school and start studying by August 14th if you're just doing your visa interview today on August 13th. So, and in fact, that's also not just to get the visa, because it'll take them, even with an emergency processing, a full day, maybe two, to get your visa printed, with everything that has to happen behind the scenes after your interview. And then also, when you arrive at the point of entry and the Customs and Border Patrol officer looks at your information in your I-20, they need to also see that it's realizable, right? So you can't get your visa and then think, oh, great, I can travel in time, on that date. They need to know that you can get to the school. So if you arrive in San Francisco, but you need to get to, Iowa, and you don't have a flight for the next day, they still may determine that that's not realizable and turn you around. So you just got to make sure, get that date pushed back as far as possible to make sure that all of that can get fit in there, so that you can, without anybody questioning whether or not you can get to your program on time, that you'll be able to make it.
That's absolutely right. And the reason why we kind of bring this up over and over again is we don't want students to be in a situation where even if they get their visa approved, they get turned around at the port of entry or something happens. Everything that you do has to make it as easy and as simple as possible for the government official to let you do what you want. So in order to make it easy for them, you have to point things out to them. I love what you said, Ben, about, making sure you have a letter from the school, or making sure you bring up during your interview, hey, my program start date has actually been changed, because the officers are not going to know that. The local staff are not going to know that. So you want to make sure that you make it clear to them to help them make a decision in your favor and to help you in your process.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But there's also the issue that a lot of our clients have run into when doing this is requesting that emergency appointment, right?
Yes.
Because you're almost everywhere in the world right now, in order to get a visa appointment on time for your program that starts this semester or even next semester, you have to request one of these emergency appointments. And everyone asks us about this, but it's hard to give anybody any kind of general advice because the process is so different depending on where you're applying for a visa.
Mm-hmm. A lot of places in the world right now, if you're applying for a student visa for the first time, you're automatically given an expedite, but that's not true everywhere, just a lot of places. So you'll want to check to see if you're someone that needs to actually make the additional expedite request. But one other thing we want to mention, after having heard back from a lot of our clients and students, is that if you were previously refused a visa and now you're trying to get a second expedited appointment, you may not be able to get it because what we have seen from the State Department is they're prioritizing first-time visa applicants for those expedites. So that makes that one single interview even more important, that you're prepared, you get everything done right the first time, so that you don't end up in a situation where you're refused and then you can't get an expedited request approved the next time to make it in time for school.
First impressions matter. Just like in real life, where first impressions are the most important, for your visa interview, the first impression is always the most important. It's the one where you have the best chance of getting your visa. And even just to get your visa appointment now, considering what's going on in the world, you need to be ready to get your visa that first time Obviously, you're going to have to make some investment in talking to the experts and figuring out how you can ensure you're going to get your visa, because you don't want to get that refusal on the record, because then you might not even be able to get a new appointment in time for your program. And when you do, it's going to be an uphill battle once you've already been refused.
Yes. And the more times that you're refused, the harder it becomes to get that visa approved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually exactly what Ben and I do here at Argo. We're ex-visa officers. We work with students one-on-one to help them be prepared for that very important visa interview, just because the stakes are so high.